Are we live? We are live. So happy Monday, everyone. I had to be really careful because, as you know, we get here together on a live stream every Wednesday. And so I was trying really to remember, okay, Claudia, today is not Wednesday, it's a Monday. So happy Monday, everyone who's watching our Floxies community right now. If this is your first time here watching the stream, we're Floxies, an international community for women in UX, UI design, and web development. We have an active Discord server with over 1,600 women connecting all over the world, and we host these free webinars every Wednesday. But today we have a special one as we invited the team at Moxie to come and show us all about their tools. So in the Floxies community, you get a mix of different roles. So you have people who are employed by a company, people who are solopreneurs, freelancers, consultants. And so we try to really aid all those different professionals. And so today we're exploring a little bit more about the freelancing space. So I'm going to share the Gather, which is the metaverse that we use to host our weekly streams. And as per usual, I like to say, if you're watching the live stream right now, if you're live, let me know in the chat. I would like for our events to be as interactive as possible. So do come and interact with our community. Come and ask your questions. This is the metaverse that we use. This is our co-working space. And so without further ado, let me get into our auditorium where our guests are waiting. Oh, awesome. You see, it always works. It's a little bit like when you're at the bus stop, right? And the bus doesn't come. And what you do, if you're a smoker, you light up a cigarette, or maybe you do something else, you get a book, whatever you do, but you start making an action, and boom, the bus arrives. And it's the same with our Floxies community. As soon as I step out of the room and come back, the room is full. So I don't have to worry about people not showing up because they're just waiting for me to go.
That's funny.
Well, welcome, guys. Welcome. Happy Monday, everyone. I had to be very careful not to forget today's Monday is not Wednesday. So, welcome, team at Moxie. Austin, Geoff, Michelle is also here, even though you don't see her, but she's here representing the team. Super excited to have you guys. And obviously, welcome to our Floxies community. Great to see you all here. If you would like to take a seat on one of those blue lovely chairs, feel free to do so. But if not, you can stand there, be pretty, and learn with us today. Austin and Geoff, welcome to our Floxies community. It's such an honor to have you here. I've been so impressed, by the work that you've been doing, and it's such a pleasure to have you here to kind of show the community how great Moxie can be for our freelancers in the space. I was just saying during my introduction here that we have sort of different roles and professionals at Floxies. We have the regular designers, developers who are employed at a company, but we have a lot of freelancers, consultants,
Mhm.
solopreneurs. And so we try to deliver as much value as possible to all those different professionals. And I mean, Moxie and Floxy, it had to happen, right? It just sounds perfect. It's a perfect combo. And I would like to learn more about you and the journey. I know that both of you come with a wealth of experience in the space. And maybe it would be great to hear a little bit more about your background before we start diving into the tool and how it can help our freelancers in here.
Sure. Geoff, you want to go first?
Um, so just a bit of background, I've been building tech startups since I was 22. So it's been over 20 years now in all kinds of different verticals, a lot of enterprise, B2B, telecom, and communications. And Moxie was born out of my frustration in the startup world of having to go out and buy all these different pieces of technology to run my business: a support system, a CRM system, a billing system, communication, consolidation, contracts. And so when I exited my last company, I took a step back and I was like, what problem do I want to solve and who do I want to solve it for? I was really sick of working in the enterprise B2B space. I wanted to work with smaller companies, creators, people that I find myself much more philosophically aligned with. And so we decided to go build something cool for creative professionals, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. And Moxie was born. And that was, uh, we started the company I think 30 days before COVID lockdown. So it was an interesting way to start a business.
Great timing.
But here we are. Yeah. So
Awesome.
excited to get to know this community a bit and show you guys what we're up to. And Austin's got a great presentation on how to improve customer onboarding and agreements. So I'm excited to hear it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And Austin, what about you? How did you how did you come across, Moxie or wanted to get involved with this project?
It started in the Instagram DMs. So Michelle and I got connected on Instagram, and it felt like talking to an old friend. I mean, I think before we talked Moxie, which was formerly called Hectic, we were talking about hot wings, like buffalo chicken. And anyway, Geoff said philosophically aligned, and that's how I felt from day one when, as a fractional CMO, I got connected with this company and I was like, oh, these are my people. Like the way they think, and we joke that we're all easy to work with, but also unemployable. And there's that idea that like you just kind of like forging your own path. So that was the chemistry that I felt. I've been self-employed now for over 15 years. I haven't had a job in 15 years. Of course, I have a bunch of different jobs that I do on any given day, but yeah, that I've had that solopreneur journey. My experience is similar to Geoff's in that when I first started as a freelancer in 2009, there were not great tools for running a business. And I tell people all the time, I really wish a business management app like Moxie had existed when I first got started, or even existed up to like a handful of years ago, because it's hard enough to run a business and make a strong impression on clients without these tools. So it's been a joy for me to spread word about Moxie because I use it every day and all my coaching clients use it. And so it feels like something I can share with sincerity and integrity. And so delighted to be here and talk a little bit about onboarding.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that you're an advocate of the tool and a user of the tool because, that's when you get the greatest results, I feel. And like that you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
unemployable professionals, because I was reading your manifesto, which is a lot of fun, as well as being very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I share that with the community, and I'm going to share with everyone else who's a little bit interested into looking at more behind the scenes of Moxie. So I'll share the manifesto with you, give it a read. It's super engaging. I love your copyright, your copy. And before we get started, my last question, I get asked this question a ton of times at Floxies. Where does the name come from, Moxie?
So Moxie, originally we went through a branding exercise. We had some other folks on the team who aren't here anymore, and the original company was called Hectic, and it was the logo was a little hummingbird. And for me, it was like starting a business. We tried to do like the antithesis branding, where we use a word and we wanted it to be the opposite. And for me, like starting a business, running a business, it is hectic, and we wanted to be the answer to that. And the hummingbird was kind of this imagery of like, as an entrepreneur, if you stop moving, you're going to die, which is kind of how hummingbirds live their lives. And it ended up being really hard to market a platform called Hectic. It didn't work. Like we struggled to get people to understand. Like anyway,
The
I don't
philosophy
suggest
behind it.
ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't suggest trying to go with antithetical positioning and marketing. It's really hard. So then I took a step back, and at that point we had a couple thousand users on the platform, and I got to know a lot of these freelancers from 5 continents, all over the world, different skill sets. And the one thing that everybody had in common that was successful was they had Moxie, right? They had this ability to like show up and work and be positive and get shit done. And it felt like, if we were going to rebrand, it felt like the right word to me. And it was actually one of the brand names that was on the table originally, but we didn't select it. So
Well, apparently
went back to the drawing board.
I can see here in the community that we have some OG Moxie or Hectic users.
Yes, nice.
Somebody who
What's
used
up,
to use
Laura?
it before, even before, through OG.
Uh-huh.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So I just think it's a great word, and it really describes the characteristics of most of our community across the globe. So
Brilliant. It definitely works out well for us and these collaborations. So should we should we get into it? Let's see how Ectic changed over the years
Yeah,
into
let's get
Moxie.
into it. All right, I will start sharing my screen.
There you go.
so I think um, Austin's going to talk a little bit about best practices, making onboarding exceptionally easy and successful. And then kind of once he runs through, I'm going to show, since I don't think we can both show a screen at the same time. I'll kind of go through the app a bit and show you how you can solve some of these problems that Austin's going to talk about
Hmm.
inside of Moxie. So
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. And in terms of the two screens, I don't know, because as I was mentioning, this is all new. Every week they change the platform, so you can try. You might never know.
You never know.
You never know.
Okay, so like Geoff said, he's going to get into some of the nuts and bolts with what Moxie can do here in a second. I'm just going to start at a higher level, talking not philosophically, that's too high, but maybe conceptually. How do we think about onboarding in such a way that we delight our clients? You all probably know this already, those of you who are freelancing or consulting, but doesn't matter what your skill set is, things have gotten really competitive. There are more freelancers and consultants and solopreneurs than ever. Your onboarding is one way you can stand out. It's one way you can earn trust, build rapport with clients. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How to think about onboarding not as this afterthought, but as a key part of your value proposition, so that when you win a new client, your onboarding is making them think before you've even started the project, wow, I made the right decision. That was a delightful experience. So we've already kind of introduced ourselves. I've been a freelancer and consultant for 15 plus years. Um, I'm more of a bourbon guy in terms of family. I've got 3 kids, been married for 13 years, just wrote a book called Free Money. It's a pricing and money mindset guide for freelancers and consultants. And I also coach freelancers who are overcommitted and really want to become more of like a freed up solopreneur. Geoff, if he wants to, he can share a little bit more about himself later. He is the CEO of Moxie. He's that serial entrepreneur type you hear about. Apparently, he loves a good sport. I did not know this
I
about Geoff until I saw this slide. So,
First of all, the spork is hands down the best utensil, right? I have a collection of 5 sporks in all different colors, and like, there's a lot of times when you're like, I don't know, is this like a spoon? Should I eat it with a fork? And you don't have to make that decision. Anyway, I assume Michelle made
there,
these slides because this is hysterical.
there is a bulletproof defense of sporks. So, those of you who don't have
You
one,
can't.
you know what to do. So that's a little bit about us. Go buy your sporks after we finish this presentation. Here's what we're going to move through. We just organized ideas into these 5 sort of approximate phases of onboarding. So let's start with connection, right? when you have a new opportunity with a client, any number of steps happen between that client connecting with you somehow, and then you eventually putting a proposal or a price in front of them. So let's think about the discovery first. This comes from 15 years of my experience. I've found that when clients get in touch, they usually have some sort of request. But after putting in so many reps, I've realized that that initial request may not be the real project. There may be something underneath it, some other things they want. And then if you keep on asking questions, you may realize that, well, beneath what they want are some things that they need. They have problems, which I define a problem as an unpleasant fact of their situation. And those problems are likely making them feel a certain way. Those are pain points, right? They may feel frustration. They may feel anxiety. They may feel stuck. We can't get the momentum we need because of these problems with the website, or these problems with the software, or these problems with the design, right? So it's really important in terms of delightful onboarding to drill down to the real problem, right? I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you finished a project, you fulfilled the contract, you crossed every T, you dotted every I, and yet the client is still dissatisfied because despite this completed contract or agreement, you didn't solve the real problem. So you did all this work, but not in the right direction. And so I realized in my career as a freelancer and consultant that it's really important that I pump the brakes a little bit early on, drive down, have that deeper connection with the client, and help them have a deeper connection or deeper understanding of the root problems, root cause, right? And so how do you do that? I think the best tools that you have available to you, other than curiosity, are open-ended consultative questions. Here's one: why are we here? I realized if I start a discovery call with a really broad question like that, I'm often surprised because they said one thing in their initial email to me: hey, I'd love to talk to you about such and such project. And then I say, why are we here? And they may say something totally different. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I asked. Another open-ended question. They may state, hey, we need help with a strategic roadmap. Okay, well, if we were to put a strategic roadmap together, what would that do for you? And it turns out, oh, they have these really compelling goals. We didn't talk about those yet. So aren't I glad that I asked open-ended consultative questions instead of taking their initial requests at face value and assuming that they had perfect clarity into what they most want and need? Let me come alongside them, help them get that clarity. We form a deeper connection. Meanwhile, I'm going to share some new ideas and perspectives, and I'm going to take a lot of notes. I ask, or at least try to answer, the same 7 questions in each of my discovery calls. I take lots of notes. I try to record not my translation or interpretation of what they said, but I try to write down their exact word choice. And I'll get into that more in a moment. But that's what I mean by taking lots of notes, recording their words, form that deep connection. Okay. Then we get into proposals, right? The proposition, giving them what they want and need, right? Because lots of clients come to you with something they want. They may not yet have clarity on what they really need. Hey, we want a beautiful website, but maybe what they need is a website that can actually generate leads for them. But anyway, the way that I try to show up when we're getting close to the proposal process is my job is to bring clarity. That's it. My job is not to sell anything yet. My job is to help the client get clarity, because from clarity comes confidence. Most of our clients, they want to grow, they want to succeed. So you can assume that most people, once they have clarity around the right path, confidence in this course of action, will take definitive action, right?
Have you noticed a higher
So
increase of conversion based on clarity?
yes, right? Because they're confident they're solving the right problem. If I ask questions and I facilitate that process of self-discovery for the client, and I come in with that posture of service, I'm not here to try to sell you something you may not need. I'm here to create safe space where we can unpack your problems and pain points. We can talk openly about goals. If I can win your trust and create that space and get you clarity, and we have now a well-defined statement about the problem, then usually I get first right of refusal when it actually comes time to get started on a paying project, right? So I do see a much higher rate of conversion, much higher win rate when my goal is to bring clarity, right? Now, it may be hard for some of you to read on this slide, but remember earlier when I said, hey, be sure to write down their words when they expressed enthusiasm, when they're like, yes, this is what we need to do. Their words are important, right? Because clients will always tell you what they want to buy and how they want you to sell it to them if you listen closely enough. So if you write down their words, later when it comes time to create the proposal and you use their words, not your own, and you're getting on the same page literally, because they're hearing their goals in their words. They're hearing you restate the problem in their words. They see you tying in the projects or services or whatever, and you're using their words. They feel seen, they feel heard, they feel understood. And I think if there's a principle here, it's that, always sell to people in their own language or in their own dialect, even, because one group of web developers will say, hey, let me give you a proposal for a mobile responsive website with atomic design principles, right? Design with atomic design principles. Meanwhile, the client said, I want, oh, it looks great on iPhones. I would say sell them a website that looks great on iPhones, not a mobile responsive website with that takes into consideration different aspect ratios of different devices, right? Sell the clients in their own words. That's why it's so important to take notes early on, right? Get on the same page literally. Now, this does remove friction, but let me get into a couple of more like tactical things around proposals, right? It's really important to get crystal clear on definitions, deliverables, fees, timelines, and team. Whether it's in the proposal or whether it's in the legal agreement or master service agreement, ambiguity is your enemy. When I look back at 15 years worth of projects, the projects that were most difficult, that were most exhausting, that were least profitable, were usually the ones where there was ambiguity that I let creep in. I did not make it very, very clear. Here's what you're getting. Here's how I'm defining that. Like, let me give you an example. Um, my door into the freelance world was writing. So if I sell someone a page of copywriting or of content, how many words is a page? Are we talking about a page in Microsoft Word? which is roughly 250 to 300 words? Or are we talking about a web page that could literally have 100,000 words on it, right? It could be an entire book, an entire manuscript on one web page. If you are talking about a web page, not even the content, but the design, okay, how many unique design components or sections could there be on one web page? Like, definitions matter because definitions can cause scope to vary dramatically from one project to the next. What about your payment schedule? What about fees? What about timelines, right? What happens when a client introduces delays? How does that affect the project timeline as a whole? So remember, clarity, 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 clarity. Use onboarding to eliminate as much of the ambiguity and substitute as much clarity as you possibly can, because that's what contributes to your satisfaction at the end of the project. Trying to shut the door on how many different ways confusion and ambiguity could enter the project. Shut all those doors throughout the onboarding process. All right, I'm going to speed up a little bit. None of us likes talking about legalese, unless you're an attorney, perhaps. So when you think about agreements, like legally binding agreements, I call mine a master service agreement. I'm tempted to rush through this phase for a couple of reasons. One, because I'm ready to get paid and start on the project, right? Number two, because I hate creating, editing, and reading these documents. And yet, when you think about risk to your business and you think about risk to the success of a project, risk to a relationship, like a misunderstanding, there's a reason that legal agreements exist, right? Because it's really easy to forget what we agreed to. And later on, we need a record that we can reference and say, no, this is what you paid for. Here's what you get. Here's what you don't get, right? So yes, have a rock solid legal agreement, but remember that legal agreements can take a bunch of different forms. So if I were you, or maybe I should just say, if I were me, and I want to protect myself, I want to remove as much ambiguity as possible. I want to set myself up for as much satisfaction as possible after the project ends. I want a long-term, mutually beneficial relationship with clients. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to create really good legal agreements that specify what they pay and when, that specify what they get, and even more importantly, what they don't get. Hey, you do not get unlimited revisions, right? I have not written you a blank check and said that I'll give you as many hours of my time as you want, right? Explain how you handle extra work. What does it cost? How do you agree upon that extra work? That sort of thing. Also, not to get into too much jargon, but explain how you approach intellectual property, both your own and theirs. Explain how you approach trademarks. If they're asking you to create like a new visual identity, a logo, a name, who is responsible for, in the US, it's the United States Trademark and Patent Office, or Patent and Trademark Office, USPTO. Who is responsible for doing all the searches to ensure that the name that you pick or the design that you pick doesn't resemble someone else's too closely? Like, I'm not an attorney. I'm not an IP attorney, a trademark attorney. I need to absolve myself of responsibility and say, hey, if we do some work together, it's up to you and your attorney to ensure there's no trademark infringement, right? How do you handle sensitive information? That's confidentiality. What about third-party materials? If you license imagery, icons, backgrounds, textures from other sites, you have an agreement with those sites when you're using their stuff. Make sure that you have a clause that explains how you have incorporated third-party materials into your work. Preliminary deliverables. I did not think too much about this one until my attorney helped me understand that, okay, as I'm creating stuff to satisfy my commitment to a client, I may come up with ideas. It's going to be a work in progress. We may discard some ideas. Well, the client should not and doesn't own all of like the sawdust that I create and discard as I'm building something for them. So that's different than final deliverables, which are what I deliver to them and what they effectively own, right? But they can't come back to me later and say, hey, we know you created some other stuff. Go ahead and give us all that other stuff. Like they can't come back and ask for that. They don't deserve that, right? What about non-exclusivity? You want that clause in your contract because you want to be able to maintain your freedom and work for more than one client at a time. Marketing rights. Make sure in your contract you have said, I want to be able to include the work I do for you in my portfolio and use it for marketing purposes. Termination. How will you handle early termination of the contract? If they decide they want to cancel the project or they don't want to work with you anymore or whatever, how are you going to handle that? We know that people can end contracts for gross negligence, right? Like you took their money and you just never delivered the work. But what about if they cancel the contract on you or the project really without cause, without reason? Don't you still want to get paid for the work you've done today, right? That sort of thing. Arbitration. Hey, if one party sues another party, or can we use an arbitrator first, a mediator? Or hey, if the client is in New York City and you live in Bulgaria, maybe you need to think about who has to travel where to show up in court. This is why we don't like thinking about these things, because it's like at the beginning of a project, things are really exciting and you don't want to have to think about, well, what if it goes poorly, right? Finally, contractor status. You are not an employee. When someone hires you as a contractor, legally, they cannot stipulate certain things like which hours you work, how many hours you work, where you work, that sort of thing. So this has been really dicey for some friends of mine recently, where they have a contract with a client, and that client is asking them to, in effect, work overtime, but is not paying them for those extra hours. And it's like, oh, yeah, your agreement should have stipulated that, yeah, they can't legally do that, right? Okay. What about information? So you've done the discovery thing, you've defined the problem and the solution, you've created a proposal, then you've created an agreement that protects the client and protects you. Now it's time to actually get started on the process. All of these are the successive steps in delightful onboarding. They put the client at ease. Are you effectively and efficiently pulling all the information you need so that 2 weeks later, you're not having to go back to them yet again and say, hey, one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. How amazing would it be to just pull all that information out right from the get-go so that you have everything you need to make really good progress in the first couple of days and weeks, right? So make sure as you're onboarding to pull out all the information you need, not just a little. So that is like, hey, who are my points of contact? What are all the different ways that I might want to get in touch with them? Let me get that information. Do I need certain decisions or answers to questions from them? Like, what is all of the clarification I need in order to get started? What do I need from them in terms of like their brand book, identity guidelines, source files, other design assets, access and credentials, right? And I recognize that people have different ways of sharing a login to the back end or dashboard of a website. So you handle that however you need to handle that. But again, imagine how amazing it could be if you just pulled all that out with a really efficient process at the beginning before you've even started on the project, so you don't have all these starts and stops while you wait for them to send the high res version of the headshots that they want to use on the website or whatever. I have built lots of websites for clients, and no joke, it came time to get started with one client. They had lost the login credentials to their domain registrar, and the only person who had those credentials was an office manager who had left the company months prior on bad terms.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what a rat's nest of problems about to erupt, right? Needless to say, I backed out of the project. I'm like, yeah, I just don't think this is going to work out after all. Also, why not from the beginning ask for their preferences? Like, are there certain days and times for meetings that are going to be more likely to work more often? What about project communication? Are they already using a project management app? Do they hate it when their vendors or their freelancers and consultants text them? Do they prefer to use Slack? How do they want you to deliver the final files to them? Are they using something like Microsoft SharePoint? Do they use Dropbox? Do they use Google Drive? Do they want you to like FedEx a USB drive with all their crap on it? You get what I'm saying? Like, we have to like navigate these considerations anyway, eventually. Why not just get all this information on the front end, so then it's like smooth sailing with the project?
And so, Austin, that's all
Okay,
part
then
of
this is the
the onboarding, right? Process that, or do you have a sort of checklist that you go through to kind of remind yourself, or is that part of a process that you utilize every time you have to onboard the new clients? Just because you're sharing such great value and so many great insights that I'm thinking, does he have a checklist, or is this part of a Moxie template that he uses every day or every time he's got a new client? Just like, and I saw in the chat, it made me giggle. Somebody said, I never thought of having to go to court in another country. It's like, yeah, absolutely. Hopefully that never happens to anyone here. But yeah.
yeah, I don't want to scare anyone, but to your point, absolutely, if you have an onboarding checklist, then you can take a screenshot of the one you see here, and then I'll go back to the other slide. But checklists exist because it's just easy to forget certain things. It's easy to forget steps, right? Like we had this new website onboarding checklist that saved us so many headaches, because we realized that even after we had finished scoping out a website project and they agreed to our proposal and we've finished with the contracting phase and they paid the deposit, and then we would say, okay, now we need to answer some questions about your website. And it was always something related to e-commerce. In all of our conversations to date, they never said that the website needed to sell anything, right? And then in our onboarding questionnaire, we're like, hey, do you need to sell anything on your website? And they're like, oh yeah, we need to sell gift cards. And you're like, well, where was that in all of our conversations to date, right? It's just easy from one project to the next to forget to ask certain questions. That's why I recommend that you have a well-defined onboarding process that includes a checklist, so that as you're moving through each project, you're like, yep, I've checked all these boxes, right? Better yet, if you save that questionnaire as a template, if you save all this stuff as templates, if you bundle it all together so that all of your onboarding can live behind a single link, there's just less room for error. But let me go back to this one slide, and then I'll pass the baton to Geoff. Okay, so we've talked about discovery. We've talked about proposals and actually getting on the same page about what you're delivering and what they're buying, right? We've talked about agreements. Hey, let's make sure this is legally on the up and up, and let's make sure I've protected myself and protected you. We've talked about gathering all the information you need to get started. What about payments? Let me draw your attention to the first two bullet points. I think those are the most important ones. I could have saved myself a lot of headaches if I early on in my career had charged a deposit for every single project, because a little bit of money already paid keeps people honest. Your clients don't work for free. You shouldn't either. So if you don't start on a project until they pay the deposit, it just seems like everything about the project goes better after that. Second thing or practice that has been really, really helpful for me, don't tie installment payments to deliverables. Like, okay, well, hey, once I deliver the final project files, then you send me the final payment. The reason that can break down is because what happens if they delay the project? That payment of yours, even if you've kept the timeline, done everything you agreed to do, gets pushed further and further and further into the future. So I've never had a client complain when I just tied installment payments to dates in the calendar, like 30 days from when the project starts, 60 days from when the project starts, 90 days, right? So you take a deposit and then you get another payment at 30 days, and then you get the final payment at 60 days. I've never had a client complain about that. And if they want to delay the project, that's on them. But anyway, also go ahead and get signatures. Also, if you can, get pre-authorization for any recurring payments if they have a subscription with you, like website hosting or something like that. And then make sure you're always being very, very clear on how you approach late payments. Some people will add a percentage like 5 or 10% that accumulates if people are late to pay. Okay, I know I just hit you with a lot. Sorry, not sorry. Take a
This is great.
screenshot of this checklist. And then I'm going to stop sharing now so that Geoff can start. And he's just going to show you a little bit of what's possible in Moxie. Hey, what can I do with my onboarding in Moxie? Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much, Austin. That was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely loved it. Before you go, you're not going anywhere, but before you step aside and have your sip of mimosa. Lucy here in the chat, she's a Moxie fan, one of our Floxies ambassador as well. And she says, I love the idea of asking the client about their preferred tools. On the other hand, it can get messy when you follow the client's preferences each time. Did you find it to be easier to do so as opposed to impose your own preferred tools up front?
Lucy, such a great question. Maybe it's me getting persnickety or ornery in my old age, but even though I'll ask clients to state their preferences, I try to default to my own preferences as much as possible, in part because they may have chosen a terrible tool stack, right? Like I have been asked to come into a client's project management tool And I'm like, this is Hot Mess Express. We may as well just work inside of a dumpster because this is terrible, right? So I would say you have your language locked and loaded. You can ask their preferences, but then you say, hey, if it's all the same to you, like I had this one client that insisted on using Marco Polo for project management. The worst idea in the world is using asynchronous video for project management because then you can't see where any decisions were made. It's all siloed in videos. Terrible. So I finally had to have what we would call here in the southern United States a come to Jesus conversation with them, where I said, I will not be using Marco Polo anymore. And they're like, yeah, I'm like, no, you please don't misunderstand. I will be replying to no more videos. So think about the environment you need to deliver positive outcomes. And if you see a client threatening your ability to deliver positive outcomes in any way, you have to step up and lead and say, hey, I'm sorry, I will not be using your Basecamp account to manage this project. You know what I mean? So there is some compromise involved perhaps, but yes, I could do a whole other presentation about all of the dangers of letting clients dictate how you do your work. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking.
Absolutely.
I'm
I
sorry,
feel
that was
like
a bit of a rant.
no, it's fine. I feel like I just want to start a new series with you and just call it Hot Mess Express. Everyone's been on that train.
We have. And often it happens because we capitulated or surrendered to client preferences against our own better judgment, right? You're like, oh, I know how this is going to go, but let me be nice. Don't be nice. Be a leader and then keep your word. Deliver what you committed to. All right, I'm going to shut up. It's really important.
Thank you, Austin. Hi,
Cool.
Geoff.
So, I think thanks for that, Austin. He charges lots of money to his coaching clients to give that information, and everybody here just got some serious nuggets of gold there. So a big, from my standpoint, a big piece, and Claudia, you were kind of hitting on this, like a big piece of optimizing client onboarding, protecting yourself, and making this new client acquisition process delightful on both sides is systems, right? If you have to remember to do all 7 or 8 of those things every time you're onboarding a new client, if you need to think about it, you're wasting time, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to miss steps. So that's now we're kind of back to why I felt it was important to create Moxie. So for those of you who don't know what Moxie is, I'll give you like the 10-second version. It's a full CRM communication management system with your clients. It's got meeting schedulers, think Calendly, forms that you can embed on your website, contract builder, agreement builder, email, phone, SMS, everything. It's like an enterprise CRM with features, and it's priced for the solopreneur freelancer. So the piece we're going to focus on today is our agreement module. And the idea behind our agreement module is that it's not just a contract, it is a single document that you can send that checks all of the boxes that Austin was talking about through his entire workflow. So we'll just go over, I'm in the wrong workspace, go over here. I got one set up. Okay. So as you go through the document, I'm going to show you kind of, this is just, you can fully design these. I've just built this out today. It actually contains Austin's contract, which is available in our template library. So we have our own contract builder that's built into this, or you can import hundreds of pre-built agreements. One of those is Austin's actual contract that he uses with his clients. So any Moxie user gets access to that. So as you go through and build these agreements, you can convey your value prop. You can talk about what you're going to do for your client. Yes, your attorney's contract. You're not a lawyer. We got it. The one you use to sell business. Um, Specify your pricing. You can do your like meeting booking right in the agreement. You can gather your discovery information, and you can get e-signatures and payment up front. So like it's really creates a lovely experience for the client because there's not a bunch of emails going back and forth. Everything's in one place. If you need revisions, you're not scattered all over the place. Actually, I don't think I put a payment in here. Let me just add something real quick.
I love the interface, by the way, super clean and intuitive, I feel. So you're in a community of, UX UI designers here. So I'm sure they appreciate just how well streamlined this is.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't want to go into the whole builder right now. There's a lot of features in here, so we'll just kind of go through the final product that the client would see. And so as you kind of scroll down through here, this is the value prop I was talking about. This is where you can set up all of your pricing. We have optional add-ons that you can configure. You can do different packages if you want to let them choose from an all-inclusive package versus maybe an a la carte package where they want to select a few things. You can set up your recurring billing, and this is all like nice and slick where it automatically adjusts the payment plan as they toggle on and off different features. We've got Stripe integrated here, so this is saying, based on what you've selected, we're going to charge you $1,125 up front, and then they would just be able to pay right in line in the agreement. You get your deposit in one fell swoop. You've got your meeting scheduler built in, so let's book our discovery call right here. We're going to go ahead and select the time. You can embed a form in here to go gather all of that onboarding data. You can have file attachments here. You can ask whatever you need. And then as you scroll down, this is actually Austin's attorney's contract that I imported into here. But this is the document that is available in our template library. And you can see he's got some placeholders in here for questions you need to answer based on your business. And then you get down to the bottom and we've got our e-signature module. So by the time the client goes through this document, you've now reinforced your value prop. You've let them select whatever offerings you're going to put in front of them, or maybe they don't have selection. You just want to put a price out in front. Either way, clearly lay out the schedule of how you're going to get paid, get payment, fully integrated with Stripe. So most countries supports bank transfer, credit card, all that. So you can do bank transfer right from in here. Save yourself the credit card processing fees. You've got your discovery booked, meeting booked, kickoff call, whatever that first live touch point is. And then your form, contract, signature, boom. And then when this gets signed and submitted by the client, it creates invoices, it creates the payment plan, it creates the project on the back end, does all of the stuff for you so that once you've agreed on what you're going to do and how much you're going to get paid for it, all of that heavy lifting of going and setting everything up is done. And then you just get to work. You don't have to think about the next step. This is all integrated into like our workflow automation module if you want to get crazy and really customize all of the automations behind the scenes, or you can just use it as an agreement builder and save yourself a whole bunch of back and forth with your client and make sure that your onboarding and customer acquisition process is delightful. So we've got a couple minutes. I don't know, Austin, do you want to cover anything else? I can go into some other parts of the product.
I'm sure we can also leave some time for questions in the community. I don't know if you guys would be happy to take a few questions because I know that we have a couple people here that use Moxie. Might be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I promise you the one drill.
We're
We're just supporters. Awesome. Let's do, in fact, give some time for our Q&A. Is there anyone in the community? Because this is our time. This is, we've been hearing lots of value, lots of great insights from both Austin and Geoff about Moxie. I'm absolutely impressed. We don't usually do demos of tools necessarily, just the ones that we think are super relevant to our community. And I think Moxie is a super valuable tool. I'm really impressed by all the capabilities. Even if I'm not a freelancer myself, I might be using it for some consultancy. I love it. I'm going to explore it for sure. But I want to hear from the community. Anyone here who's got a question for our guests? Feel free to either put it in the chat if you're feeling shy, or actually show us your faces. Why are you all hiding today? Cold feet. Come on, Nikki.
I can ask them a question, which is, how many tools do you currently use to run your consulting or freelance business? When I started using Moxie, I was using PandaDoc for proposals, Typeform, and Google Forms for forms. I was using, it was Calendly and then SavvyCal for my scheduling links. And so it was just a sprawling sort of tech stack, and it was a lot to keep up with. So, but that I think is the norm for a lot of us, or maybe it's just me. Maybe you all being mostly web developers and designers, maybe you out.
We do have
Ellie and
a
Heather
question
have
from
it figured
Ellie.
out. They're doing great. Yeah, Ellie, what's up?
Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, awesome.
Great. For the presentation, it was very interesting. And so for me, the problem is I'm just getting started, right? So I feel that I cannot dictate most of what you have shared today. Maybe this is just fear, or I don't know, but for example, I started with a client who I know, and before payment, the client is already asking me questions. So, and I feel like I should not say no. Like I should be like, sure, like let me help you set this up, because I'm just starting, right? So my question for you is, for budding freelancers, would you feel that there should be some more flexibility around contracts and around deliverables or things like that? Or do you feel that, on the contrary, it has to be set from the beginning? What's your take on that?
So I really appreciate you being vulnerable and talking about fear, because when I got started freelancing, I mean, I broke every single rule. And the last thing I want to do is propose any kind of rigid thinking, right? Because if your first client was also kind of a friend, it would be really weird to say, well, I can't answer any more questions until you pay me. Right. And like you can injure the relationship, like you can hurt the relationship. So the best advice I can give is to go ahead and think through what you believe an efficient onboarding process would look like, and stick to that process when you can, knowing that if you were to break some of these rules, you'll be okay, right? It's like I'm here 15 years later having broken every single rule that I mentioned. So it's like I'm like this living proof that like you make mistakes, like especially with agreements. I was missing key clauses in agreements, and thankfully I've never been sued, but there were some situations where a project took, no joke, 2 or 3 times as many hours as I had planned to put in, because I didn't create clarity with the contract. So Ellie, I don't have a great answer for you in terms of like, oh, you absolutely cannot break these rules and you can break these rules over here. I would say trust yourself, trust your own judgment, and like if you feel like uneasy in your spirit, your gut has been like, oh, right? I would say always go with your gut. And again, I wish I had better advice except to say it is harder when you're new because sometimes you don't even know what the rules are, so you don't know if you're breaking them. But trust your
But
gut and
can I,
also respect yourself, right? Then Geoff's going to say something.
yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that as a freelancer or early stage solopreneur, however you self-identify, like, you only have to come off as new and inexperienced as you want to, right? The people you're quoting and going to bid business with, they don't need to know that this is your first contract. Like, it's okay to have a little bit of bravado here and ask for what you want and ask for what you think you deserve and try to build a system that you think is going to work for you. I mean, if I've probably hired, I don't know, 1,000 freelancers in my career, and I couldn't tell you like whether I was their first job or their thousandth. I wasn't asking, they weren't telling me. So don't assume like you're coming at it like I'm very new, but they don't need to know that. So
I love that so
I
much,
think
and I
it's
agree
okay to
with
just go
that
in confident.
100%. I agree with that 100%. It's like we're having this conversation in the community very often about like, do I state myself as a junior designer? And I see some people in our community being a junior designer for 3 years. I'm like, you're not a junior anymore. It's not like you go to a
Mm-hmm.
bakery and buy bread and you ask, the baker, like, oh, hold on, how many years have you, have you had kneading bread?
How many
Like,
rolls have you baked?
exactly, exactly. So I love that advice. Thank you both. And Ellie, I hope that helps. And also, I just want to add to that you're not by yourself anymore. You're not, you're starting
Mm-hmm.
out. You're in this community. If you have any doubts, just share. Be as open as you were with us today, which is hugely appreciated. And we're here to support you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for the answers. They make total sense also to me. I didn't think about not saying that I'm starting, right? But yes, I think it's a good point. And thank you, Austin, for the reminder that rules are here, but maybe we have to trust our guts also sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Nikki, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I do. And outside of my other question that I put in the chat, I did have a different one. Can you guys hear me or no?
Yeah, I can hear you really
Yeah,
well.
out and clear.
Okay, got it. So my question is, what option slash information would you advise for offboarding a client? Because it seems like whenever I go to any of the talks and everything else, everyone's always starting at the beginning, talking about getting
Mm.
client. We know that there's issues with dealing with the client during the process, but I don't see much literature or anything about offboarding the client, like actually saying, hey, I delivered the product, I need the testimonials, not need, but you want testimonials and everything else. So are there best practices that we should have?
Short answer, yes. I'm gonna drop in 3 bullet points, although I think I may have just deleted them, so I may have to follow up later um, and send them to Claudia so she can get them to you all. But basically, have a checklist for how you deliver files, how you tie up loose ends, and then a couple weeks after that, I would have it in your calendar to ask for a project testimonial. And I usually ask people to fill out a questionnaire. So you can use a Moxie form for that. I use a questionnaire instead of asking for a testimonial because people hate writing testimonials, even if they're happy to give you a positive recommendation. It's like, I don't think anyone really enjoys having to write one. So what I do is I ask people to just answer questions in a form that feels like a lighter lift, at least for most of my clients. I then write the testimonial for them and get their approval on that. And then after you've got the testimonial, you can decide, like, put another date in your calendar for either adding the project to your online portfolio or writing a case study or both. And then a little bit after that, follow up with them and ask for introductions to other interesting people they know. So I've started asking for introductions rather than referrals, because I found that if I say, hey, do you know anyone else who needs my help right now? The answer is often no. But if I say, has anyone in your life said anything like this recently? Would you introduce me to them? They can think of someone. So it's slightly different. But those are the 4 steps for me. Send all the final files, ask for feedback, turn that into a testimonial, put that in your portfolio, and then ask for a referral or introduction. And have that as a part, whatever project you manage, whatever project management you use, add those 4 steps. Like, don't let your mind say that a project is finished until you've checked them off as well. I hope that helps, Nikki.
1,000%. Thank you.
Amazing. And I'll be sharing those bullet points or those key takeaways with the community as soon as I get them. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time we see the Moxie team, because I'm truthfully super engaged by this event and I love everything that you're working on, and I would definitely love to hear more about your updates and what you envision for the tool, and if there's anything we can do to help you, because you were here sharing your knowledge and insights with us today, which is super great. If there's anything our community can do for you, I would like to offer that as well. So just let me know. We'll be more than happy to collaborate. One last question from the community because of time, but I see Laura. She's got her hands up. Laura, are you still here with us? I saw you walk in. There you go. Hi.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of cooking. But I just want to say thank you to Geoff for this fantastic tool. It's really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And even your support, I've had support sometimes, and you're so quick. And yeah, it's fantastic. And also,
Thank you.
updates and everything. I think today there was another email that a new feature has been added to it and things. And yeah, it's a fantastic tool. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
From the OG, Laura. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Floxies, for being here and getting better every week with our stream. I love that. I often say this to you: the more you put into the community, the more you get. And I do hope that these events will help you become better professionals. They definitely do help me. So appreciate having you all here learning with me. And once again, thank you so much to the team at Moxie for coming and presenting your tool. But on top of the tool, it's not just about the platform, it's about everything else that you guys have shared with us today, just like how to be a better professional, how to be a better freelancer. And I really, really value and cherish that. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And
Thanks for
again,
having
let me
us.
know if
Appreciate it.
there's anything else I can do. Would love to stay in touch. And I wish you all a great week ahead. And I'll see everyone on Discord. Bye you all. Take care.
Yeah.
Peace.